So what we have is our events here along the left. Along the top, we've got the number of claims which have gone one path versus another, and it's going to be descending. But as you scroll to the right, you're going to see any number of interesting and obscure paths where things were bouncing around, not completing steps, not going all the way through the process as we would expect. In the Path module, you can see a depiction of the variety of ways in which a process was fulfilled, the frequency distribution of all of the process paths, with the most commonly followed behavior showing up here towards the left. Now this is clearly going to expose when steps have been skipped over, done repeatedly, or totally out of order, with the most common behaviors highlighted here for us. So it looks like 1,704, or only 5.4% of our claims are completing as quote-unquote straight-through process. And there are many different variations of how this process is being completed. And one other thing to mention here is we've got another metric along the top, which is our average duration. So we can actually start to compare how long it's taking us to complete one execution path versus another. And obviously we can start to drive towards not only a more compliant form of completing this claims process, but a more efficient process from a timing perspective. Here our throughput comes into focus, and we can make sure we do everything in a timely manner. We have the ability to actually change this metric and take this a step further. So if I don't want to look at this by my average duration, but instead by the cost of each one of these execution paths, I have this metric available to me. So now I can start to focus a bit more on the bottom line and say, this is the amount it costs us when we go through the straight through path, and there are some other variances when we execute other behaviors. Obviously, this one that's $208 versus $110 is not ideal. We want to hone in on this and figure out exactly what's happening here, who is executing these specific claims, and try to push them towards the more efficient, from a cost perspective, execution path for these claims. But we can now compare all of our different process paths and see where the costs are being incurred and where our bottom line is being affected from a larger perspective. Now, if there's something that stands out here that shouldn't be occurring, or constitutes a safety risk or a compliance issue, we have the ability to really drill in on that very quickly. So let's say regarding this coverage confirmation step, we expect that this should always be happening no matter what, and if it's skipped, it's going to be a non-compliant claim. And what we can do is set a filter that says exclude timelines with this activity. So by doing this, we're going to look at all the claims that have not had a coverage confirmation step. When I set that filter, it actually shows me that there are quite a few different paths where we haven't completed a coverage confirmation. And for these paths to proceed to a subsequent part of the process being completed would be a huge red flag in the insurance business. Now we can drill a bit further into these specific instances and start to uncover root causes and start to focus our efforts to remediate this and make sure we put protocols into place to make sure we're not skipping that coverage confirmation step and processing unconfirmed claims. So that filtering of the data that I've just done will become a theme that you'll see as we go. We'll start with our large data set and begin to reduce it down to more manageable sizes based on conditions that we build in. Or sometimes we can just let the tool do the analysis on its own to try to uncover the interesting things that are happening within our workflows. Now, the last aspect to mention about this path analysis is we actually have the ability to not look at this from an arrow-based perspective, but look at it via the schema. So we can include the actual process schemas as a part of this frequency distribution and start to visualize exactly where things are going from a schema visualization perspective, giving us a more graphical look at exactly how each of these paths are being executed.